Alfred Chen is assistant professor of computer science at University of California, Irvine. His research interest spans software and AI security, system security, and network security. Currently, his research focuses on security problems at the AI and software software stack of autonomous systems, and his work has very high impact in both academia and industry, with 30+ research papers in the top-tier journals, in the top-tier venues. Recently, his research has triggered 30+ autonomous driving companies and V2X standardization work group to start security vulnerability investigations, and some of those has confirmed to work on these security fixes. He received various awards, including the prestigious NSF Career Award, and most importantly, he received his PhD from University of Michigan's Computer Science Department in 2018. Alfred?
Okay, so this works. So so thanks a lot for the introduction from Henry. So I guess as introduced by Henry, so I'm mainly work on the security area, so which is my home domain, so which is so different from most of the people here. So from the point of view, my community, right? So even traditional vehicles are vulnerable enough, right? From various different ways in vehicle network security and all kinds of like the connectivity interfaces. But now with CAV, we are adding even more connectivity and even autonomy like on top of it, so which really increase the attack surface a lot more. So I guess now we all have a good launch, right? So that's probably a good chance that we have enough energy to think about the risks, right? For this new technology, especially from malicious actors, right? Like attackers. So I believe we have a wonderful panelists to discuss this. So I will introduce them like one by one, and then we all have some discussions. So I guess the first one I want to introduce is Professor Wenjing Lo. So she is a WC English endowed professor of computer science at Virginia Tech and a fellow of IEEE. And I think she is now on the stage. So her research interest covers many topics in the cybersecurity field. She's actually a very well-renowned expert in the cybersecurity field. And then her research interest is more on the wireless networks, trustworthy machine learning, and security privacy in the IoT and CPS, like Internet of Things and cyber physical systems. So she got lots of best paper awards, and I guess the most prestigious one I would say is the Infocom Test of Time paper award, which is very rare. And then she also served as a program director at the U.S. The National Science Foundation, NSF, actually from 2014 to 17. So yeah, I guess welcome Wenjing to join the panel. So the second one that I want to introduce is Jennifer Tisdale. So she is a CEO at Green, and she is actually a cyber research firm headquartered in Reston, Virginia. And then she is a cyber economist, strategist, recognized for building cybersecurity strategies and programs for industry, government, and academia. So her expertise has been concentrated on the security of connected and cyber physical systems, I guess, which is the topic of this panel. And her portfolio include expertise for the industrial IoT, the IoT, smart cities development and planning, critical infrastructure, and advanced transportation mobility, including connected and automated vehicles, aerospace, and the securing of unmanned military platforms. She was actually voted one of the SC Magazine's Women to Watch in Cybersecurity, actually in 2018. So let's welcome Jennifer to join the panel. And the third panelist I want to introduce is Professor Yihen Feng. So he's an assistant professor in the civil engineering department at the Purdue University. So his research areas include CVEs, of course, in this panel, and also the smart transportation infrastructure with a focus on the intelligent traffic control and transportation system cybersecurity. So he is actually the co-chair of the Traffic Signal Systems Committee Simulation Subcommittee at TRB, the Transportation Research Board, and serves as the editorial board member of Transportation Research Part C. So yeah, welcome Lei Yihen to the panel. And last but not least, so we also have our fourth panelist, Jonathan Petit. So Dr. Jonathan Petit is actually the director of engineering at Qualcomm, where he leads the research in the security of CAV. So Jonathan is actually really a pioneer in the CAV security. So he was actually the first to demonstrate attacks on LiDAR and camera systems for autonomous vehicles. And his research also covers privacy of CAV, which where he demonstrated real-world eavesdropping and its effect on the location privacy. So I believe Jonathan is remote with us today. So let me just bring up him through Zoom. He's here? Oh yeah, so Jonathan, you are here? So you can hear us? Yep.
Yes, I can hear you.
Great.
Hi everyone. Good to be here.
Great. So I guess now we have all our panelists. So here's how we are gonna get started with this topic. So actually each of the panelists prepare a few slides to talk about their positioning in this topic, and of course a little bit of introduction of them, of their what they work on and what they want to advocate for. And then just on top of that, I also want to probably for each of panelists to set the stage of the discussion, I will probably ask each of them to share their opinion on why they think the CAV security is important. I mean, I guess they can share from their own perspectives as individuals, or from the policymakers' point of view, industry developers. I guess you feel free to share that different views for the importance of CAV security. So I will start just ladies first and alphabetical order. So I will start with Wenjing. So do you want to come to the stage and talk a little bit? Yeah, I'm fine with either way.
Right. Okay. So yeah, do I have? All right. So yeah. Thanks. First, I want to thank Alfred for inviting me here. So my background is in computer science, and I do cybersecurity. So I actually haven't done a lot for CAV, like a connected autonomous vehicle. So this is a sort of an exciting new area for me. And I think he already showed my slides. So, but I actually had I got involved in this field, I think, 3 years ago by working on the NSF project. NSF and DHS co-founded a project on autonomous vehicle security. So for that project, we're basically focusing on in-vehicle security from the system perspective, from the in-vehicle network security perspective. With respect to the question she asked, whether this is the CAV security is an important problem, my answer is certainly yes, right? So coming from my cybersecurity background, computer science, cybersecurity background, my research is mainly in information and network security. So coming from that background, I see a lot of similarity from the CAV security and computer system and network security, right? So now the autonomous cars are getting more and more, you have more and more automated, the functions, right? You have more and more small computer systems embedded in your cars. And now cars are interconnected. Just like you first build the computers and then get the computer connected, and then at the beginning you focus on the utility, right? Make the system work. Then you start to see there's someone who has nothing better to do than attack your system. Then you see all sorts of attacks. I believe the cyber attack to the autonomous vehicle, to the CAV system, will also increase with the wide deployment of these systems, right? And there's a lot of things we can learn from the computer security, network security, but I think it's even harder to secure these autonomous cars compared to secure a computer system. There are a couple of reasons, right? So the computer system security, your computer, your network already have many, the cyber security mechanism embedded there. When your computer, Microsoft PC or Apple computer come to your desk, right? So there's already years of the research and development, and they already have a lot of security mechanism there. But how much security mechanism you have in the cars, right? And Google, the Microsoft, Apple, they have maybe the best security experts to develop those security mechanism. And whenever there's a vulnerability identified, they have the mechanism to patch your system. But how much expert we have for the auto industry, right? So, and also another thing is I see is computers inside a better physical protection, right? In your desktop, in the data centers, but your autonomous cars and the roadside unit are deployed on the roadside. So it's I would say the attack surface it's higher, it's more. And the consequences for the attack, right? So the consequences for the attack is even more, I think, alarming, right? So I remember this is what Bruce Snyder said, right? So if attacker compromise your computer, crash your computer, you lose your spreadsheet, you lose your data. But if attacker compromise your car, you lose your life, right? So there's a significant difference between this, right? Because the cyber physical system, the autonomous cars, take immediate action to affect you and your safety, your safety and your property. So that's I think a couple of points. I think it's really important to consider cybersecurity. And I think not only the security, privacy is another big concern. I was just talking to, I think, Patrick from Ford on my table. So he mentioned there's a lot of privacy concerns. I think this is all associated with this connected, autonomous, the vehicle industry. I think I will just stop here and
sure, thanks.
Move to the next.
Next should be Jennifer.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me here. We won't go over my slide, it's just a bio. But I'm here to represent the hacker perspective in the cybersecurity conversation of connected, automated, and infrastructure cybersecurity. So I am the CEO of GRIM, which is a cyber research firm. We are based in Reston, as was shared with you earlier, Reston, Virginia. I am located about 20 minutes from campus, and my team on the transportation side of the company are all located here in Michigan to be near our clients. My one bullet point that I want to be sure to push forward to all of you today is I think that the OEMs are doing an incredible job of keeping pace with the technological changes that they are integrating into their systems. Of course, there is more to do from a cybersecurity perspective, but as we integrate the vehicle and it becomes increasingly part of the IoT dynamic, and we have smart infrastructure, smart cities, connected roadways, smart grids charging our electric vehicles, and the EVSC security. We have two security positions that we need to take very seriously. One is the protection of data, your personally identifiable information, as you might be familiar with in a traditional IT conversation, is also now being harbored within the vehicle itself. There are some who think that data is king in the future mobility business model. I would agree with that. We can talk a little bit more about that later if you'd like. The second concern is exactly what was just said. So thank you to her for sharing that this is a life and limb conversation. As hackers that are dedicated not just to the commercial automotive space, but to aerospace and protecting the homeland with our DHS and Department of Defense contracts that we serve, we do have facility and security clearance in our personnel, so we do get invited to some of those more sensitive conversations. What that helps us do is understand the total threat landscape for vehicles. As we're seeing in the geopolitical conversations today of what's happening overseas, the cyber attacks that are hitting critical infrastructure can and might also happen here in relation to our critical infrastructure that is supporting our roads, our vehicles, and our communities. So as the car becomes increasingly part of that IoT conversation, we do have to have some discussion about what is the probability versus the possibility of a nation state, a malactor, in an organized way, attacking a fleet of vehicles. So that's what I'm here to talk with you about today. On that happy note, I'll take my seat.
My slide. Okay. First, I want to thank the CCAT Symposium for having me here. And I'm Yihan Feng, and I'm currently assistant professor at Lyell School of Civil Engineering at Purdue. And prior to that, actually, I was working at Amtree for a few years, so I'm very glad to be back here at Michigan again. So my main research areas are the smart transportation system, including the intelligent traffic control, the cooperative driving automation, the interactions and the coordination between the smart infrastructures and the smart vehicles, and also from the security perspective, I'm more interested in the system level, not only the single vehicle security, but also the transportation infrastructure security, and also the transportation system at system level security. So also a little bit different from the traditional perspective of investigating the security from the computer science or electric engineering point of view, like some of the panels here. We're more interested in how to utilize the transportation engineering or vehicle engineering domain knowledge to look at this problem, because if you think about the smart transportation or smart vehicle, it's a multi-layer architecture, right? From the hardware to the firmware to the software and up to the application level. So we need to enhance every layer or every level of the defense to further protect the system. And so from this point of view, we actually did a comprehensive analysis, or I think we're the first analysis to investigate the security of the smart traffic signal control system with the collaboration with Alfred Henry and also Professor Molly Mao at Michigan. So we systematically analyzed the vulnerabilities of the smart traffic signal control system, what are the potential attacks, what are the consequences, and how to detect the anomalies in the traffic control system. And also with the support from MCity, we built a testing platform to test this with the real infrastructure devices. And from my perspective of answering whether this security is important to the CAV, of course it's yes, and it's not only to the CVEs, right, but also important for the entire next generation transportation system. So a lot of people have already mentioned about the safety aspects of this system, but safety is the primary goal of the transportation system, but besides safety, we also have other objectives like mobility and sustainability. If the system cannot be secure at the cyberspace, those objectives could also be compromised, like what our previous work targeting on smart transportation system, smart traffic signal systems, while the safety may be not threatened, but the mobility of the intersections will be greatly reduced. I don't know if you're aware of a recent ransom attack on the colonial pipeline system, right? So if the hackers can control the natural gas or fuel of this pipeline transportation system, then the entire national economy will be compromised. So yes, so that my answer is like not only from safety perspective, but also from mobility and other perspective, this is important. And also I think this is one of the distinguishable aspects between the transportation security and the computer system security. Okay, I think I'll just stop here.
So, Jonathan, you are still there? Huh.
1, 2, can you hear me?
Yes. So I guess, if you can just, so I think your slides is up here. So if you can talk, talk a bit about your positioning and then why you think security is important, that would be great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yep. So hi everyone. Indeed, I am the Director of Engineering at Qualcomm, where I lead the research for connected and automated vehicle security, but also on the security of AI. So this is the position. At Qualcomm, we have a red team, blue team approach here in my team, where we will indeed look at the offensive and the defense in terms of attacks and building the right detectors for connected automated vehicle. And so we also support our standardization team and our product engineering team, so that I'll make sure that our solutions, our research is then translated in terms of regulation standards, or also in terms of a product. And some of the research is already part of our product offerings. So that's kind of what we do. And Alfred already mentioned kind of like my long experience in attacking and defending connected automated vehicle. So why I think that the security of CAV is important and what the aspects are important, I think my colleagues just mentioned a really important point, the effect on safety, but not only about efficiency and supply chain in general. If someone attack indeed a fleet of trucks, for example, or an automated truck, you can envision indeed the supply chain, as we've seen with the COVID, has been really disrupted, could be something like that. So at the end, it has financial implication. And why do we have that? It's even harder with the CAVs because it is in non-controlled environment. This is now even an on-site environment. You could say it's on public roads, fully available to anyone to do something on it. So I think that's also something that really talks about why the CAV security challenges are higher than in current controlled environment where we can protect that. So really, it is part of the critical infrastructure. It is going to be connected to its DMCs, it's using other supporting infrastructure. So all these complexity that we have in an automated vehicle is what makes it even harder, because we have from the sensor to the hardware, software, OS, of course, but then you have the controls, you have the AI, you have of course the networking aspect of it. You know, you rely, and then you connect, as I said, to a smart infrastructure, TMCs, GPS, satellite. So all of this complexity and the critical infrastructure are part of what's make it harder and to design the right security control. So I think that'll be for me now.
Oh, okay, so I guess so. Thanks for the opening for everyone. So I will probably just get to the real discussion. So because in the panelists in our offline discussion, so we all feel like cybersecurity importance is a trivial question, but I guess for the broader audience, it's better to set the stage first. So so I guess the first question is more, I guess, so now we all know it's important, we should do it. So the question is, the first is what's the current status, right? So so I want to probably, this is probably more of a question to Jennifer and also to Jonathan. So particularly on the security aspect of the CAV technology, the products today, so what is the current practice in industry? And then do you see it's being mature and it's being have a sufficient provision, sufficient adoption of the security solutions, or you think it's just still in a unstructured early stage? Sure.
I'll start. So compared to where we were in 2015, which was sort of the advent of the public conversation about automotive cybersecurity, it began with the FCA, the then FCA GPAC, right? So 2015, June specifically, that occurred. Prior to then, there wasn't a lot of open dialogue in industry at the OEM, at the tier level, and certainly not at the cybersecurity supply chain level. So since that time, we've seen a lot of advancement, a lot of improvement overall. To my comment earlier, I do believe that the OEMs, and in particular the tier one suppliers, are doing an incredible job of trying to keep up with implementing sound cybersecurity practices. This is not a one and done solution. There's not a magic bullet that's going to make any one product or system or network completely cyber secure. I think we all appreciate that challenge. But now with the advent of the ISO SAE 21434, that has really opened the spigot in my world in terms of how many clients and customers within the automotive supply chain are reaching out for pen testing, red teaming. You know, I've got the best job in cybersecurity. I hope nobody is offended by that. We just get to break stuff. We get to break other people's products and provide them insight for how we got in, how we did it, what tools we use, what methods we use, right? What worked and what didn't. It is getting increasingly more challenging for my team to do that. I will say, as an asterisk, we have never not gotten into anything. We've never failed. With enough time and manpower, we can get into just about any product. So what that tells me is that we will have the same problem over the life cycle of the vehicle, okay? So unlike your phone that you keep in your pocket maybe 5 years, your car is going to be on the road for about 20 years, 200,000+ miles, right? You're going to change owners in that vehicle. The data will remain in the network if it's not wiped. Who's maintaining the security of that? I think that we'll have conversation today about over-the-air updates. I'm sure you maybe heard about OTAs earlier today. Somebody asked a question before lunch about liability. These are questions without firm answers. So that's part of the fun of this, is the pioneering stage of figuring out how to create solid cybersecurity practices, policy making that can be nimble and keep up with the technological pace of change, which if you've been to DC, you know that's going to be hard, right? Anytime the government gets involved in creating policy, that will be an incredible challenge, not just for consumers, but for OEMs and suppliers to keep up with as well. So the short of it is, we're way better than we were in 2015. We still have a long way to go.
So just to follow up a little on that, some more to do. So can you specify? So what are the specific aspects you think you think industry should be doing?
Yeah, I think that this will be a completely self-serving statement, probably. But I think that we have a lot of businesses in the supply chain that are doing their own testing and validation of security. There are a lot when they go to third-party testers that are looking for a checkbox mentality. And what I mean by that is they're not really looking for you to find flaw. I will not cite, obviously, who has said what or who I work with, but I have had customers ask me to redact findings because they didn't want it to go to their bosses, right? And so when those scenarios happen, it paints a picture of a very big problem, that if the engineering team that is established to build the system is also on the hook for securing it, if they're not incented properly, that we're going to have more situations like that arise, where findings are not being reported or not being addressed. And so that's something that's happening today, unfortunately, and not just in the States. It's not a domestic problem, it's an international problem. And we have to make sure that we're working in harmony around the globe, right? So not just with the industry and the supply chain and the stakeholders, but also with the global policymakers that are creating mandates for how to test and validate. So there is a lot of work to be done in what to test, how often to test, and what to do about it if there's a finding. So those are big questions.
Okay. So I hear supply chain is kind of the biggest headache you think should be overcoming, but definitely very hard. So, Jonathan, what's your take in terms of this current practice, and also what are the areas you think that are substantially lacking in industry?
You're asking me, right? Because I can't hear you too well. So.
Maybe I should just go to So is here better?
Here you go. Yes.
Yeah. So I guess so previously I was asking the question about what's the current status of the cybersecurity of CEV industry, and then I'm wondering about your take about it, and also what are the biggest I would say like shortcoming in the current practice you see in industry.
So I do believe that we've seen, and as Jennifer said, I think we came really a long way on this, and I see a tremendous progress on getting all the processes and the workforce in place in all the auto industry. You know, we've seen, especially when I'm participating in the Auto ISAC, and I can see that all the OEM tier 1, tier 2 have their P-cert, so they have a team of analysts and security force to put in place all the right cybersecurity processes. Everyone is really working hard on getting the compliance to 21434, that's for sure, and also ruling out these SBOMs, so really better understanding all the software that you have within your product. So I think for me, this is like really going to the right direction in terms of practices and processes in place. But in terms of the shortcoming, what we have, it's the lack of workforce. It is not easy to find the people that are already fully educated on this, and that's why I think all the work done by all the universities are really important in terms of building this workforce for us, so that they understand the issue from the automotive and cybersecurity. And then now we are adding another level of complexity. We want someone that knows about computer networks, computer systems, and even AI. We are adding a lot more to it, and control, so all of that together, and then maybe even transportation overall. So that's one. Another shortcoming that we have is regulation. So for the automotive space, it's going really towards the right direction thanks to the UNR 155, in the 21434. That's great. We're getting there. But on the automated vehicle side, this is where it's still not there yet. We are working hard with the ISO. There's one, it's called the TS 5083. It's the safety of automated driving system. Before it said safety and cybersecurity of ADS, and they removed the word cybersecurity recently, which made me really sad, but it's still there within the document. So, and this is clearly coming. It's the next evolution of 21434 to consider for the automated vehicle piece. So those are the two things that I'm thinking, like having regulation really drive the automotive space. As you know, is like if we have good standards and regulation, the automotive industry will do it. So this is a shortcoming that we need to keep going there, but it's towards the right direction.
Okay, thanks. So I guess so far I hear from the Jennifer and Jonathan is more from the policy, from the workforce development, and also the regulation and supply chain this point of view. So and then I also want to ask more about the technology side, which is more from the academia, panelist. So in terms of the security of CEV, so besides the aspects mentioned by Jennifer and also by Jonathan, so what are the non-trivial research questions there? So what are the things? What are the aspects that the technology is not even ready to secure these kind of systems? I guess whoever wants to speak can.
Okay, so probably I can start, and so I think I echo what Jennifer and both Jennifer and Jonathan mentioned, that the testing of the security would be a challenging task. Also it's also important the research question that how we ensure the security of a CAV. So over the years, actually, the automotive industry have developed this testing, how to test the safety for the vehicles. For example, ISO 26262, the functional safety, right? You follow the standard to do the testing, and then we can accept the residual risk, for example, of the vehicle safety. Then the vehicle can be released to the market and can be sold to the end customers. But for the security, do we have a standard test procedure to do that? And actually, my personal point of view is testing security is more challenging than testing the safety, because security is evolving, it's more dynamic. So let's say if a vehicle is tested safe today, it would still be safe tomorrow. But if you tested the vehicle, let's say, secure today, but it may not be secure tomorrow because of the advanced, for example, computing technologies, advanced or new thoughts in the attacker's mind, right? So you cannot really ensure that the security of the vehicle is maintained across this lifespan. So another point I want to bring is from the transportation infrastructure's point of view. It's also very challenging because many of the transportation infrastructure devices are designed to be deployed, for example, in the middle of nowhere or buried under the pavement. So if those devices later have some security breaches and we want to replace software or hardware of those devices, how are we going to do that? It's going to be very costly. So how do we assure that in the design phase to ensure that those devices are secured is a challenge. But as I said, since this security aspect is also evolving over time, so couple them together, it will be an even bigger challenge.
Okay. Maybe Wenjing, do you want to share a bit?
Yeah, I think it's good to hear from Jennifer, from Jonathan, and from Yiheng about their concerns on the security and safety perspective. I think those are the testing, the standard for testing, and including the workforce requirement and the need. I think it's all important. I think it's all as academic university researchers, I think we can help. But I want to bring up another perspective from the university, the academic research point of view. For the core security research, right? I remember I started to look at CPS security, and from also 2015, the Miller, the attack to the vehicle, right? So we also sort of start looking at the security problems, and I think people agreed that you can do the intrusion detection, you can do the preventive mechanism. It's very similar to a computer system, right? The Miller attack. I remember at that time he mentioned that for him to launch those attacks, it's on a traditional car. In order for the access to be successful, he actually had to look for the automated function, those components, like to control the speed. He has to look into the the control components for the, I think what is that? Anyway, it has to look at the automated features. But now with autonomous cars, most of the functions, speed control, steering, they're all automated, like computer controlled, right? So that only makes the attack even easier to launch. But when we are looking at the security problem, we start with a CAN, intrusion detection. So when we look at the CAN messages, this is I had a feeling that the auto industry is getting the security through obscurity. So if you know what that means you get the security by hide your system, like the CAN message exchange, right? So yeah, there's a format, but how to interpret the semantics of the CAN messages is not known. It's different for each different car vendors and for each different models, and you only see the 0, 1s, and you don't know what they mean, right? Ideally, if I want to develop an intrusion detection system, you have so many sensors, right? If I know the sensors, it's a state, I can form that as an image, and then there's a pattern you can learn, and you can effectively use machine learning to see what is a normal driving condition, what is an abnormal driving condition, and if add the context information, this is driving, this is backward, this is turning, this is parking, that will be very efficient mechanism for intrusion detection. But we don't have that information. We can't get that information. We worked with other people, ORNL, to collect those information. Just you have to do a lot of reverse engineer for each car to understand just what those bits means, right? So I think the university research is usually more advanced in terms of looking at the more fundamental problems and looking into the 5-year, 10-year vision of where the world will be and what is the challenge that need to be overcome to get us there. And you know, when we are security researcher, when we are facing this challenge, you know, they're all proprietary information. You don't get to know the you know, the system. That's makes things a lot harder. I think it's already a lot of debate in the security industry, right? So the basic assumption by our academic researcher is that you need to know your system. The enemy know your system, right? So in short term, you know, not knowing your system, not publish security through obscurity can get you short-term security. But in long run, you know, the security through obscurity is not, it's actually harmful, right? So only the system that has been examined by many eyes, right? Only the system that has been carefully verified can be eventually trusted, right? So I was, just as a university researcher, the police, I hope, you know, the auto industry can have some openness to allow the university researcher to participate in this security and also develop the defense in this, you know, get this easier for us to participate in the security research in auto industry. So I hope there will be more, you know, the university industry collaboration. I think this is a great event because I saw so many industry people are here. So some sort of openness, right, will be great.
I'm not sure if this is fair to say that the industry has done a, you know, security by obscurity. You know, you're picking on Canvas here, which of course indeed was proprietary, but you look at many of the standards and it's all open, right? So 609.2, it's open. People can look at it for the V2X standpoint. And so I want to say that indeed you point one example. Now, let's not generalize to or everything to say that we do by obscurity, because, you know, we all firmly believe that security should be looked at. So now, of course, what you're suggesting is more, if I want to test a complete automated vehicle, can Waymo, Cruise, can you give me your full stack with everything you have so that I can observe? And the answer is, of course, no. So I think that's your point. And so you have to do like what Alfred is doing. You take commonly accepted simulation tools and then run with that and be able to then transfer that to the industry so that the industry can take it internally to do it. Because unfortunately, there is so much competition and IP in that space that it's going to be really challenging to get anyone to share that with you. And I understand that this is problematic, but I feel like we are doing, this is not what I would consider as security by obscurity.
If it makes you feel better, I will let you know that the Auto ISAC has trouble sharing with each other, their own members.
So in terms of the openness, I guess just want to follow up on that. So for the industry, what are the current initiatives to be more open and I guess be more friendly to academia? I guess also speak on behalf of the academia, the point of view.
We are friendly. Indeed, you have the Auto ISAC, which is a great medium to get your vulnerability disclosure or your research tapping into all the OEMs, or at least towards the OEM and the tier ones here so that they can listen to you. You will see all those different programs to really discuss with the researchers about the solution. That is how I think things is done in terms of openness for that. But I hear with you, for example, for us in Qualcomm, what we do, we try to indeed provide tools. I'm a firm believer that one of the technical issues we have is that we need more eyes on the problem. And it's unfortunate that we have a handful of researchers doing that for the connected automated vehicle. And we need people to look more at the global attack and augmenting that common simulation platform with all attacks so that we enable people to reproduce attacks, to add more to it, to then help us identifying the right detectors to be standardized or to be deployed, the right priority for this. And that's why we try to provide those kind of also tools, what we think are relevant attacks, for example, but we help the people. And one thing that is missing technically, I just wanted to say that, was the generally, when we do the attacks, it's the impact of that attack. We usually look like at the microscopic level, like within the vehicle itself, but then at the macroscopic level and the transport, for example, that's something where we look less at this. And usually it requires to have a full system, a full end-to-end solution to really understand the impact it has. We've done so many attacks on VDOX that we say, oh yeah, we're gonna send fake data, great, but what is the impact on the application? Can you confirm what is really the effect at the end? And I think that's this last mile that is really missing in our case. So we need to expand also this aspect.
Thanks. Yeah. So we should definitely work more on that, and then so you can also support after testing like issues, and so I guess we should definitely work for common, I guess, benchmark and platforms that can for both industry and academia to contribute to.
Yeah, and talking about the benchmark and platforms, and I think it would be a good idea to establish a kind of attack database. Right, like we have very comprehensive crash databases. On the national, both on the national level and on the state level. But with more and more of those cyber attack events, can we establish a similar attack database to categorize what type of attacks, what are the consequences, and who should we report this attack to, and such things. So with this database, both for industries and also for academia, can research the trend of those events and get deeper into how to better defend the system.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think Alfred was also in the other workshop, right, talking about the automobile security data sets. So I think I think there's a DOT website. They provide some data sets, but more on the vehicle behavior, like vehicle on the road with the road, like a map and how the lane placement and the vehicle behavior data sets. But I think for example, for when we do the intrusion detection, we really miss the CAN data sets. You can collect the CAN data yourself, but the real, the actual attack data sets is hard to get. And how the vehicle will react to different type of injected message attack on the real vehicle, I think that's very hard to get. So yeah, maybe Jonathan, if you have those data sets, you can share with us.
I don't do CAN, boss.
No, I mean, even for the vehicle-to-vehicle communication, right? That's what you do, right? So if there's a data set, so that if you could share those with us, that would be great.
Yeah, we have a submission to DEF CON in the pipeline. So hopefully if it's going to be accepted, we'll be able to share with you more. Okay, great.
Yeah, so I guess it seems like that's a common sense. I mean, the consensus today for building this kind of common benchmark platforms and scenarios, because so I was also involved in a NIST panel on the testing standards for the on-road autonomous vehicles. I think that was also one of the takeaways for the AI the testing. So yeah, I guess definitely the panelists, I will follow up with you guys to see whether we can come with something concrete, like a white paper or something like that. But then we have 10 minutes left, so I want to also open the Q&A to a broader audience, because I guess for the panelists, we are so kind of rooted for security, but then we definitely want to hear from you guys. So any questions you guys want to ask to the panelists?
And as you were saying about hackers trying to find the easy way in, as you have more and more vehicles connecting to more and more infrastructure for, seamless transfer of data, for example, if you wanted to a route to a hospital, get to the GPS information, it's kind of a network of trust for establishing where you need to go, what you need to do, et cetera. And that allows hackers or ne'er-do-wells more entryways to do no good. So what is the, obviously this is a very big question, but is the solution to this creating more robust architectures so that you can have more protection on the autonomous vehicles tech stack, or is it making connection points for infrastructure or businesses or public facilities more robust? So I was wondering what your thoughts would be on that.
Can you state the question more clearly? Sorry.
So I guess my question was like, so if you have more and more connected infrastructure, such as like traffic lights, hospitals, things like that, and you have more essentially entry points for hackers to get in and then mess with your system, is the solution to it kind of making the whole network more robust and more resistant to entryways of unwanted origin, or is it kind of setting up a one-way protection system so that you basically you don't have to rely on your infrastructure security or not in order to make secure connections that won't be compromised?
I'd say the answer is yes to all of it. I think that it really will be reliant on who owns the technology. I think you said the example of like smart buildings, right? We have increasing technology for consumer convenience that I think is great. I'm a big fan of technology and using it. But we have to do so smartly. And so there's a lot of question right now in the cybersecurity community. If you talk to a researcher, a hacker, or whatever label you want to put on them, when you ask them, should we have smart technology? The knee-jerk answer is no, we should not, right? So how do we best approach that? I think that if it is a smart building, we'll use that, or a smart parking lot. There's a lot of smart parking lot development happening right here in Metro Detroit. Who owns the property? That person is ultimately responsible. But we do need to have some sort of mandate, some sort of regulation, regulatory action, legislative action that incents people, business owners, to integrate security practices and to be collaborative. Somebody said it at the panel before lunch. I use this a lot as well in my daily conversations. We wouldn't have airbags and safety belts in our cars if somebody didn't mandate it. People are not going to spend money on security and robust testing if they're not influenced to do so. And so we really need to have bigger, broader conversations on the Hill. I'm going to DC tomorrow, as a matter of fact, to talk about IoT and this understanding for what smart policy making should look like. We need that implemented because security will only cost a business money. It's never going to make a business money. And at the end of the day, we are a capitalist society here, right? And that is important for their livelihood and well-being. So we have to be able to influence those decisions holistically. Starting in DC, personal responsibility also. We want to make sure we're doing the ethical thing as often as possible, but we have to make sure that we're willing to pay for it too. It's not going to be cheap. And it will be ongoing because we know that technology is ever changing, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I just want to add, I think this is a very good question. Like any technology, right? So I think there's a utility, there's a security, there's a good side, the function that they want to actually accomplish, right? Like a CEV, I think certainly help, the increase the fuel efficiency, making the world better. But there's clearly there's a more like a attack surface provided to the attacker, right? Many technology are like that, right? Like we develop a privacy protection technology. So while we are protecting the user's privacy, sometimes it also help some bad guys, right? Like Bitcoin, for example, right? So it's commonly used for the ransomware, and also it allow some criminals to walk away because of the privacy protection technology, right? So there's a good side, there's a bad side of each technology. So I think it's more discussion need to be made, like what is a good side, what we need to protect, what is the importance of this, and how much we care about the cost we pay for to accomplish this, right? Like a privacy technology can be made protect the user privacy at the same time and keep them accountable if they did something wrong, right? So I think it's from my point of view, we'd like to look at the need for such technology, right? We want to see what are the need for the technology and whether to what extent we can actually accomplish those capabilities. And then together with the business model, with the regulation, I think we all need to talk to each other and know what's the capability of each, and then I think we can build a more complex, safer world.
Okay, I think we have a break. That's next on our agenda. So if we could just take a quick break. We will have opportunities for networking at the end of the day, so we'll have a full hour of networking opportunities. So let's take a quick break before our next panel.